Hi, my name's Kate from VocaBiz, and today I'm here talking to you all about how to start photographing weddings. It can be a very daunting thing, especially if that's your niche and that's your goal, that's your target, that's what you really want to market this year, and it's completely achievable. So I'm going to help you today. I'm giving you steps on how to make that happen for you. It was definitely a long process, but something that over the time and over the dedication and these steps that I'm going to give you, it worked. It happened, and now I'm at the point where I have to turn weddings away because I maxed out every year. The first thing you really need to know with any kind of marketing, especially with your photography, is you need to be able to show what you want to shoot. So if you don't have any weddings under your belt, how can you expect a bride to look at your Instagram page, your website, whatever it might be, and be like, I want them as a wedding photographer if all they can see is family shoots? So you need to be able to get wedding content that's real. And there's multiple ways of doing that. But today I'm focusing on second shooting for other people and being able to gain the content through experience, which is so valuable. When you're shooting a wedding, like, you don't get those days back. You don't get a redo. This is their day, and this is your only chance of making it everything that they want. So this is the best way to get hands-on experience, hopefully get the portfolio photos that you need. And that's something I'm going to go over with you, but this is the best way for you to get the experience and the portfolio. The first thing I did when I wanted to get into the wedding niche was, you might, as a photographer, be self-employed. You might be a solo operator. There's no one else working with you as a team, especially to start with. But just because you are working for yourself doesn't mean there's not a huge community out there. There's so many photographers out there. There's so many advanced and experienced photographers that you can learn from them. And so many are willing to teach you in many different ways. And even just by following along, you're going to learn how they operate a day, how they guide people, how they direct their clients, and just the overall ambiance on how they control the entire wedding day. So the biggest thing is to meet people. Honest to God, when I first started, I was following people on Instagram, and genuinely, I would comment on their photos because I loved their photos, and I thought, so many different things about their aspect was what I enjoyed and what drew me to their work. So, I started a conversation, shot a message into their DMs and said, hey, how's it going? Like, your work is amazing. I love it, blah, blah, blah. And then we just started casually chatting. And then it was like, oh, do you want to go for coffee? And so I met so many photographers just like literally hanging out and having coffee. And it was nice because not only do you get that step into the wedding business that way, but you also get to meet great people. And even now, like, we do photographers get-togethers all the time. And it's a great way of socializing, being a part of a community, and also having someone that you can bounce ideas off of. Or if you have a question, you're like, I really am stumped one day and I don't know what to do, you can just shoot them a message because you've now become friends with them, and they'll help you, which is amazing. So jump into their DMs. Go onto Facebook groups. There's always communities in the area. We've got Fraser Valley Photogs or what have you. We've got a Vancouver photographers type thing. So all these communities, like, you can ask questions, you can get to know people, see their work, support their work, and then they'll support you. And then you can follow their stories on Instagram. And if you've already got conversations going, if they need a second shooter, then they'll either reach out to you and be like, hey, like, are you free that day? Can you second shoot for me? You're like, I'd love to. Or you can keep an eye on their stories, and then, randomly, like, if you have someone need a second shooter, they might post in there and be like, hey, DM me, let me know what you're shooting with, and we'll talk. So those are really great ways to be able to get in as a second shooter. Something I would really recommend you do before you jump into second shooting, because second shooting, you might not be the primary photographer for that day, but you are a very essential photographer in the wedding experience for that couple. So you don't ever get that day back. So you need to know, one, you need to be very confident in your abilities to photograph well. So you need to be able to control your camera without really thinking about it, because your lighting can change so drastically, even just from photographing the groom to photographing his mom crying in your ceremony. So and it could be harsh light on your groom, and it could be backlit on the mother of the bride. So you need to be able to change those settings very quickly to be able to get it so it's not completely blown out and not completely underexposed, so that when your main photographer goes through editing your work, you know that it's going to be something that they can work with. So controlling your gear is absolute must if you're going to be a part of capturing someone's day with them. But not only just capturing the day, but having the equipment to be able to capture it. So having not only one camera, but I would suggest always having two cameras. I've always said I love dual shooting. I always shoot with two different cameras, two different lenses. That's my thing. That's always been my thing. I love that. However, it gives me a primary, but also a backup camera. So if you're second shooting, If you don't have a second camera, what are you going to do if in the middle of the ceremony your camera craps out on you? You're stuck. You can't pull out your iPhone and start taking photographs for this couple because it's not going to cut it. But you need to have a second camera accessible so that you can then seamlessly continue shooting as if nothing actually happened. You have two cameras. You also need to make sure you have enough SD cards, because if your primary photographer does not give you SD cards to be able to use for the day, you need to make sure you have enough to capture the day, but also to be able to give to that primary photographer for up to a few weeks, because they have so many different weddings. They need to, everyone has a different backup process, and that's something I'll go into as well for myself. But you need to make sure that you're able to part with those at least for a little while and you still have enough. Every wedding day and every different photographer, they might require different lenses. So when I have a second shooter, I would prefer that they're not shooting with a 35mm lens, because they're going to get a lot of sort of general photos. Whereas with my second shooter, I prefer them using a longer reaching lens, say like an 85mm, because that will give me much more details and candids and close-ups and more emotional type images. And that's what's going to help, especially if I'm in there with my camera and I'm moving around constantly. I'm not going to be in half their photos. They're going to be more captured on like the closer up portraits, which will really round out their gallery. So having a small arsenal of lenses, you don't have to spend a lot of money. They can be the nifty 50. It can be the cheaper 35mm. It can be a cheaper. One of my lenses that I used for years on my Nikon was an 85mm, and I think I spent $400 on it. And I used that for years, at least 2 years. But the quality of the pictures was great, and it gave me the versatility that I needed to be able to photograph not only my own stuff, but also to work for other people. With weddings, you also have such a variance of light, like I've already mentioned, but not just daytime light. You have to be able to photograph at nighttime with dark lights, with flash. A lot of people can be afraid of flash or not have a flash. I think the first flash that I would say invested, but it was not an investment. The first flash that I really used was like a $70 one off of Amazon that it worked. It worked great for a couple of years, carried on. And then I slowly advanced up, and as soon as you invest in it, you're going to love the work that much more. But it gives you somewhere to start. You need to be able to have a flash. You need to be able to know how to use your flash, because no one likes a blown out picture. You need to be able to photograph in those situations. So not only do you need to have this gear available to you, you also need to know how to work it seamlessly. That is so huge. Even as a second shooter, your photos can be just as important. What happens if the primary photographer has issues with both their cameras? You need to step in, and you need to know that you're confident and you are their backup, you're their option. If, all of a sudden they get a migraine and they fall ill or whatever it might be, if you're there as their second shooter, you're their backup. So you have to know, you have to be confident in yourself. If you're confident in yourself, you're confident in your equipment and your experience, and you can do it for them if you need to. Not that that's ever going to happen. Hopefully, let's all cross our fingers, but hopefully that's never going to happen, but you need to be available. One thing I should note about cameras is something that I will never, I say never in a pinch, it can always happen, but I won't willingly hire someone to second shoot for me if they don't have dual card slots, because problems in the past that someone had a single card slot and their card had issues. And I lost all of the guys getting ready, and I lost all their photos from the ceremony. I wasn't as concerned about the ceremony shots because I knew I had enough as the primary photographer to get by and not be missing any moments. However, nobody else was there for the guys getting ready. So that was a really tough one to chew. I was able to recover it with software, but by not having that dual card slot, I just now very shy to be able to hire someone without that. It's not a must. There are many photographers out there that won't see that as a problem, and that's fine. That's their deal. But something to keep in mind, that a dual card slot is huge, because also if you get permission from this primary photographer to use your images in your portfolio once the gallery is delivered, you already have those photos, because you've not only given one SD card to your primary photographer, you've then got an SD card for yourself. So you have those images and you don't have to risk not getting those pictures, because the whole process of second shooting is to not only gain experience, but it's also to build your portfolio. And this is a really great way to build it with real couples, real emotions, real experiences, and not just like your bridal couple, but like the entire ambiance of the day. Because that's what's going to bring brides in, if you can show that you're telling their story. You might be watching this and thinking, okay, I can't invest in the gear. I don't really know my camera as well as I think I need to. And that's perfectly fine. You might be there today, but in 6 months, you might be there, and then you can say, okay, you know what? I've already built this relationship with photographers in my community. I'm going to practice for the next 6 months on families and couples, whatever it might be, to build that comfort level with the camera and, um, make some money off of people and to be able to perhaps invest in your gear a little bit more. So in 6 months, if you've built these relationships, you're going to have that opportunity to start second shooting in that time frame. Now with building those relationships, but also you build those relationships, you can also ask to be an assistant for the day. So when I go to weddings, I have so much crap with me. I've got my Pelican case, I've got my, big duffel bag with all the extra crap. Plus, it's endless. It really is. So it's not that I'm bringing someone along to carry my bags for me, but I love being able to give people the experience of seeing how I work, on seeing how I control a day, and it helps me out. It truly does, because they do help me out with my bags, because then I can run and be with the bride and they're like, no, no worries. I've got this. I'll carry a bag and I'll meet you there. That's totally fine. But it gives them a chance to see how I control my day, see how I communicate with my clients, and they get to just experience it without that pressures of, okay, I'm photographing and you've got those pressures of that second shooter, but you get the experience without it. And that can be so valuable, especially when you're first starting out. I did it for a couple of photographers when I first started out. And I'm really glad I did, because when it came to being a primary photographer, I had the experience of just observing. Because when you are a second shooter, you're not observing as much as when you're a second shooter. Because when you're a second shooter, you have that responsibility already on your shoulders. They're paying you for this. You're capturing these moments. Like, you have to be here, 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 whatever it might be. But as an assistant, you can observe the entire day, no pressures. Most of the time it's not paid, and that's okay. And you know what? Some photographers will pay. It's whatever works for the situation. But if you build up these relationships with photographers in the community, you can then build off of that. And they'll be your support system when you need it, which can be so valuable. Like, even now, like people that I started talking to years ago, I consider them really good friends, and I can just shoot a random text to him or her and just be like, hey, like, I've got this problem with a client, or I've got this troubles with my software, or whatever it might be, and be like, hey, do you have experience with this? And they're there for me. Someone's there for me with an answer, which is so valuable, because Google can really just chafe sometimes, and you get too many of the wrong answers, not enough of the right ones. So it's all about this community that you can kind of build together, and that support system, and it will help you build your portfolio. And then as you build more of a relationship with people, they're going to refer you to other people, especially when you start assisting, or if you start second shooting, your name is going to get passed around constantly, and they'll tag you on the wedding day so other photographers can get your name. So it's a huge way of being able to get your work out there, to be able to build that portfolio for yourself, and then start second shooting. And then, there's other ways to be able to build your portfolio, such as style shoots, which I can go into in another video. But today is all about second shooting. It's all about building it. The relationships are honestly just about as important as the portfolio sometimes. So build it, go for it, have fun, meet new people, and just love what you're doing. Come back in a few days and I'm going to have another video. I have no idea what it's going to be about yet, because I don't know what day it is today, but check back. It's going to be something good. It's going to be something that helps you, because every week I'm going to be here multiple times teaching you all the ways that did work for me, all the crap that didn't work for me to stay away from, and just helping you along the way, making life a little bit easier.